Welcome, everybody, to the first edition of Athletics Baseball, Past, Present, and Future. My name is Ralph Tyko. I'm the host. My co-host is Alan Blumkin. I'm in California, where the A's are right now, and Alan is in New York. How are you, sir?
Okay.
Good. We're embarking on another project on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. We're going to give the A's the homage they deserve. They are one of the 5 or 6 real great franchises over the history of baseball. They are floundering right now. There's a stadium issue. When I watched the playoffs, I heard names like Donaldson and Addison Russell, and Coco was in there last night for Cleveland, and the A's are what they are at the present time. And we're going to take it just like I do a number of the other shows on the network, past, present, and future. We're going to honor the great teams of the Connie Mack era and Connie Mack himself. We're going to talk about the days in Kansas City. Alan, you had an interesting stat for me right before we went on the air about the comparison of the Milwaukee Braves when they left Boston and the Kansas City A's when they left Philadelphia. Tell us about that one.
Okay, the Milwaukee Braves were there for 13 years, and every season was a winning season. And the A's were in Kansas City for 13 years, and every season was a losing season.
Now, what do you attribute that to? Because that's a remarkable dichotomy.
Well, basically, it comes down to a couple of things. The Braves' ownership and management knew what they were doing most of the time, and the A's didn't. The first 6 years, they were in Kansas City. They were owned by a man named Arnold Johnson, who was a handmaiden to Del Webb, who owned the Yankees. Arnold Johnson had owned Yankee Stadium, and he had a lot of business dealings with Del Webb, who was a Yankee co-owner. And there was basically, for those 5 or 6 years, there were a lot of trades.
It was like a farm system.
Yeah, exactly. Two of the ones that the Yankees sent out there to get experience were Ralph Terry and Clete Boyer. And the way it turned out, anytime the A's had somebody that the Yankees wanted, the most famous case, of course, was Roger Maris. The Yankees would trade their excess or players who couldn't contribute to the Yankees anymore, and they take the price picking from the A's. And this went out when
too, that the A's even getting Roger Maris involved Yankees who had been traded to the A's.
Yeah, Maris came up with the Indians in 1958, right. And Frank Lane was running the Indians at that point, and he traded Maris because Maris was basically stuck behind Rocky Colavito on the Indians to Kansas City, and they wound up getting Vic Power and Woody Held.
Both guys that came from the Yankees.
And basically, Lane was quoted as saying that he knew when he traded Maris that it was a one-stop trip to Yankee Stadium, but he said he had to make the deal for the Indians. So, of course, after 1959, when the Yankees had by far their worst year under Casey Stengel, they were 79 and 75. They traded Hank Bauer, who was past his prime, and wanted to go home, which was Kansas City, Don Lawson, who was 3 years removed from a perfect game. Norm Seaburn, who Stengel didn't like after he messed up a few balls in the 1958 World Series, and the ever popular marvelous Mark Thornberry. And in turn, the Yankees...
Seaburn was a good, solid American.
He turned to be a good, solid player. And in turn, the Yankees got first baseman named Ken Hadley, Joe DeMaestri, who had been the regular shortstop for the A's franchise for 7 years, and Roger Maris.
Right.
And the rest is history.
Maris very unhappy. He did not want to play in
No,
New York.
he didn't like the spotlight here, and especially after 1961 when the sports writers drove him absolutely crazy with the Ruth chase. And he never really felt comfortable playing in New York.
Right. Interesting to note, as Vince Scully used to say, that Woody Held and Vic Power traded for Maris by Kansas City, helped make that 1959 Kansas City or Cleveland
team very, very good. They finished second to the White Sox.
They competed with the White Sox at the very end, and the Yankees. The Yankees weren't out of it.
No, the Yankees were out of it that year.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it was 79 and 75, and they were lucky to finish above 500.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because all of us were in shock
that
they could.
That's the record
that
the
badly,
Mets had when they won in '73, if I'm not mistaken, or close to it. So,
but then after the 1959 team in Cleveland, Frank Lane went crazy, and he broke that team up by trading Rocky Colavito, trading the leading pitcher Cal McLish. Eventually, Lane, was fired from there. But
Gabe Paul replaced him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Gabe Paul was in Cincinnati in the mid-50s. Then he went to Cleveland, and he came to the Yankees. I think he may have also been in Houston for a while.
Okay, now, before we talk about the horrible situation that the A's find themselves in right now, and it may be a good situation. On one level, I was reading something because they're in big danger of losing their luxury tax, at least a major portion of it, and it may be just what they need to kick themselves in the butt. Because I also read why they have the luxury tax. It's not because they're a small market team. They're not. It's because they're in, quote, an antiquated ballpark, end quote.
Yeah.
It's a frickin' dump. I can't tell you how plumbing literally backing up. So all that and talk about the Raiders moving. If the Raiders stay, the A's are done here. See, this area is not going to have two new stadiums built. The one stadium is a football/baseball stadium.
Well, they're building a stadium in Las Vegas, football stadium in Las Vegas for the A's. For the Raiders.
They're odds-on favorite, no pun intended, to go.
And the real diehards from Oakland to Las Vegas isn't all that big a trip. So I imagine the diehards will still go there every home game.
Right, and it's becoming a rich person's sport.
Oh, yeah.
Just like baseball.
Yeah.
It's no different. It's disgusting to me because maybe because I'm not a rich person, but that has a lot to do with it. I'm sure, but your mindset changes. Somebody said, "Don't trust me with would you trust me in politics?" Well, I'll let you know when I get there. Because people change for all different reasons. Never having the experience of being rich or to be able to go and pay $25,000 for a ticket to last night's game. Secondary market, of course.
I have a friend of mine that had to game one. He had 2 tickets, and they cost $1,100 a piece.
But I heard stories
last night probably was insane.
Yeah. Don't even need to
But
think about
I had
how nice it was. How nice it was that it was a game like that. It was just terrific and a great way to end the season. And
another week the free agent folly start.
Right. We'll have that to talk about. That.
Yeah.
It does never end. And you could add, we're not doing the Met show right now, but you could add Familia's problem to everything that's going on. We'll talk about that on the other show. Let's talk a little Connie Mack. I've been doing a little research. He relinquished power to the A's to his kids. They were grown men. Earl Mack was one of them, and I think the other one was Connie Mack Jr.
No, Roy Mack.
Roy Mack.
Those are the 2 sons from his first marriage.
Earl and
Roy,
and
yeah.
Roy? Okay.
Yeah. And the history of the A's, even continuing to this day, has been one of extremes. They're generally either very good or very bad. There's very, very few seasons that are mediocre. If you go down their history, and Connie Mack had 2 periods of real success in the early 1910s when they won 4 pennants and 3 World Series in 5 years, and the team from 1929 through 1931, which won 3 pennants and 1 World Series. But outside of that, they went through a number of incredibly bad stretches, like the 1916 A's, who I read a book on called "As Bad as It Gets," and they were 36 and 117, and in some cases compared unfavorably to the 1962 Mets.
Wow. What was he like?
Connie Mack was, from what I read, from what I've read, and a man named Norman Mott came out with a 3-volume series on his life. He was very, very old school. He was originally owned the A's when they came into existence in 1901 with a man named Ben Scheib. That's where Shibe Park comes from.
Right, Philadelphia.
And he managed the team from 1901 until he retired at age 88 at the end of the 1950 season. But he was also the owner. He always managed in street clothes. He used a scorecard, a rolled-up scorecard to waive players for defensive position. And he never, from what I understand, that he never used profanity.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
But might not have liked my show.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah, he broke up. He had the first great team. Oh, they won in 1905 and were beaten by the Giants in the World Series. And then he won 4 pennants in 5 years from 1910 through 1914. And he broke up that team because of the Federal League. He was pretty much of a tightwad when it came to paying players. And when the Federal League came into existence and started offering his players double from what they were making with him, he let them all go and jump, and the ones that didn't jump, he sold off.
Oh, wow.
So from 1916 through 1922, they were in 8th place, last place all the time, and some of those teams, like the 1916 team and the 1919 team, which is absolutely brutal.
You know, it reminds me of the Charlie Finley era.
Oh yeah, well, it's the same franchise, and then he started building the team up. He challenged the Yankees in 1928, and from 1929 through 1931, they were the class of the American League behind Al Simmons, Jimmy Fox, Mickey Cochran, and Lefty Grove. And they won the World Series in 1929 and 1930, were beaten by the Cardinals in 1931, and then the Depression hit. And basically, in those days, the only thing he had for income were ticket sales and whatever concession sales he could get. There was no merchandising, there was no TV, no radio, and the state of Pennsylvania did not allow Sunday ball until 1934. So he couldn't stage Sunday home games.
No, they have blue laws.
Yeah, they had blue laws. Pennsylvania was the last state to allow Sunday baseball.
So
after 1931, 1932, he started selling off. Cochran went to Detroit. Grove and Fox went to Boston. Simmons went to Chicago. And they were down in the sewer. And when people tried to get him to build a farm system, he refused because it would be too expensive. So consequently, they were way behind the Yankees and way behind the Brooklyn Dodgers, way behind any team in the American League.
Yeah.
The Cardinals, any team in the American League that built up farm systems. So basically from the time that he broke up the early 1930s team till the time they left Philadelphia, they were pretty bad. I mean, they had 1948 and 1952, they finished fourth place. That was the only two times they finished in the old first division from the time he sold those guys off to the time he left after 1954. And by 1954, they drew a crowd that season of 306,000. The Phillies had taken over because the Phillies were in bad shape, and they moved to from Baker Bowl into Shibe Park in 1938. But the Phillies came out of the woodwork in the late 1940s with the Whiz Kids, and they took over the city from the A's. And the A's the Sons, who were taking over the team, couldn't find any financing in Philadelphia that the league would approve. And Del Webb says, I have this guy, Arnold Johnson, who's willing to buy the team. The Yankees, excuse me, had Kansas City as their AAA farm team.
Right.
So the Yankees moved the Kansas City Blues to Denver and let the A's come into Kansas City. And he was there for 6 years, Arnold Johnson. He dropped out of a heart attack in spring of 1960, and the team wound up in the hands of Finley.
Was that like a for sale kind of thing? Like
yeah, his estate wanted out.
Okay.
So that
go ahead.
The league approved Finley, not knowing what they were getting themselves into. And from almost the first year he bought the team, he wanted to move them to Dallas. He actually wanted them to move to Louisville at one point. And he got into a feud with the leading sports writer on the Kansas City Star, which is the leading newspaper there. And it wasn't until the end of their tenure in Kansas City they started building up the team, where he got people like Bart Campaneris and Catfish Hunter and Reggie Jackson.
Yeah.
Most of the others who were in the A's teams in the 70s weren't there until they moved to Oakland. And he moved to Oakland and started building up a team and build up that team that won in the early 70s. They won 3 World Series, and from my standpoint, these teams were extremely underrated. They won every game they had to win.
No,
it's like Stengel's early Yankee team.
They were deep and fiery.
Yeah.
And they all hated Finley.
Oh yeah.
And they had that in common. And some great personalities. He had Vida Blue. But I just want to say that a lot of their pitching was developed in Kansas City. Hunter, for instance.
Yeah, and Boom will owe them. Boom will owe them and Fingers.
Right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just the position players, and pay homage to Campy. Oh, what a terrific shortstop.
Yeah, he came up. He was the first one of them to come up.
Right.
Yeah, I think he came up in 1965.
You can't talk about those years without mentioning the fact that it was Finley because Satchel Paige wore green and gold.
Yeah, for one game.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, they signed Satchel Paige. I mean, he had gimmicks. He wanted gimmicks with orange baseballs. He had a mechanical rabbit that came out in Kansas City to give the baseballs to the umpires.
He had the mule.
Yeah, he wanted to cut the pitching down to 3 balls and 2 strikes. And he had all sorts of crazy ideas. Some of them which worked, and some that didn't. And one of the gimmicks they used in 1965, because the fans in Kansas City stopped showing up, he brought Satchel Paige, who was listed at 59 at the time. Yeah, the accepted birth date for Satchel Paige right now is July 7, 1906. And so he brought Satchel Paige in, and Satchel Paige pitched 3 scoreless innings at that age.
Wow.
And he probably was better than almost anybody I had on that staff at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. Another notable in Finley's years, he had Joe DiMaggio as a coach.
Yeah, well, that's what the A's. That was with the Oakland A's. He had him for a couple of years.
Right.
And there's this Facebook site called Say What, which I'm in, and these guys put up pictures of players basically in the uniforms that they're not noted for. So when this first started, somebody put up a picture of Joe DiMaggio in an A's uniform.
Right.
Which looked very, very strange. And,
very strange, yeah. A lot of pictures with Reggie and Bando and those guys. He was apparently short on some pension time.
Yeah, and what I put down as the comment on that picture was a nation turned its lonely eyes to him. Yeah, from the Mrs. Robinson, Simon & Garfunkel.
Absolutely.
Song.
Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio?
Yeah.
And, that was a big misunderstanding with one of the great poets, American poets, Paul Simon.
Yeah.
He did not, Paul Simon, mean to slight Joe DiMaggio in any way. He was just looking for a little continuity in verse.
Yeah.
Put it that way, and it just came together, and it was like, where have you gone? It was another time. It wasn't like, where have you gone? It's where the time
has gone, yeah. Exactly, yeah.
And
I think he explained that to DiMaggio after a while. They got together and he explained it to DiMaggio and smoothed over that.
DiMaggio understood.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. Of course, Paul Simon had to pay him $25,000 to undo.
Well, of course. Yeah, Joe never did anything for nothing.
No, of course.
After he retired,
do you understand this, Joe? No, make it another 5. I'm learning. Make it 30.
Yeah, and basically what happened to the Finley teams, obviously, was when free agency came in, and he was either unwilling or unable to pay his players, they all got out of there as soon as they could and was scattered over and the A's went into the tank again. They had that 1 year with Billy Martin when he had those pitchers in 1981 that he basically overworked, and then they went back into the sink again and emerged with the Bash brothers with Canseco and McGuire that made it to 3 straight World Series.
Absolutely.
And then they went
Ball
down
was
again.
A trip. You can't gloss over Billy Ball.
No, Billy Martin, this was in between his terms as a Yankee manager, between his his second and third terms as Yankee manager.
Right.
And
you might throw in Texas in the middle of that too.
Yeah, and he started with Minnesota and then went to Detroit, went to Texas to the Yankees. And he was fired in '78, came back in '79, was fired again, and went to the A's for a couple of years, and he was a terrific in-game manager. But as far as dealing with personnel, there are players who bought into his system, and there were people who didn't. There's an excellent book that came out on him, biography of him that came out 2 years ago, which I read.
Billy had demons, no question.
Yeah, he had a lot of demons, and he did for whatever reasons, all the pitchers that he used a lot in 1980 and '81 basically came down with bad arms soon after.
None of the Peter Golenbach, a show that you and I are both on, Three Baseball Michiganers, said something about that. He interviewed those guys. None of them are really mad at Martin about that. They don't think that was Martin's fault. And I'd like, as we get further on doing the show, I'd like to find out a little bit more about those pitchers. Great pitchers. Norris was one.
Yeah, McCaddy.
Kingman was another one.
Yeah,
McCaddy.
Langford and Kingman. And Keogh, Joe Keogh.
Joe Keogh, who's, when you say Keogh, you got to...
He was the nephew of Marty and the son of...
Marty Keogh, and there was another Keogh.
Yeah, it may have been Jerry Keogh. It was the pitch. Matty Keogh was the pitcher, and Matty was the son of Joe, who was Marty's brother.
Okay. Now,
Matty
Marty
Keogh, yeah.
Keogh was a reserve outfielder in the 50s, backed up Ted Williams.
Yeah, a lot of guys did that, and when they, I think a lot of guys backed up Ted Williams, and when they try and make regulars out of them.
There was another guy who did that.
Gene Stevens. There was an outfielder, Gene Stevens, who backed up Ted Williams for 6 years.
Was he a football player too?
Carroll Hardy, yeah, that was after Gene Stevens.
Oh, Carroll Hardy was the football player, Notre Dame, if I'm not
mistaken. He was the one who pinch hit for Ted Williams because Williams had fouled the ball off his foot. I couldn't continue. That's why I pinch hit for him. And Gene Stevens had 1 year where he played 104 games and got up 63 times.
Beautiful.
He played the 8th and 9th inning for Ted Williams. Yeah.
This was a nice introductory show. Next week, we're going to have your friend, Mr. Nemec, who is going to give us some Philadelphia trivia, and we'll see just how much you beat my ass by.
You want me to tell him that you're going to call?
Yeah.
Or what day are you going to call?
Well, I can call him right after the show. How about that?
Okay. All right. It's just in case I didn't give it to you. It's 631.
Well, don't give his number on the air.
Okay. All right.
We'll talk after we sign off.
Okay. Also, since the Canseco McGuire teams, the only good stretch that they've had basically was when they had Giambi and Tejada, the team that won 20 games in a row and always lose to the Yankees.
That was a terrific
team. In the LDS, they had that team for about 2 or 3 years. And Giambi, of course, won the MVP and left to go to the Yankees.
And his brother didn't slide.
No.
A lot of people are going to remember that for a long time.
And the Giambi brothers have the record for most home runs by a brother team in the season. They hit 61, I think, in 2002.
Before we get off and go back, it just flashed in my head. You mentioned Jimmy Fox. Do you think Jimmy Fox, his career was on a par with Lou Gehrig, and would have he gotten if he played in New York? Jimmy
Fox. His nickname was the Beast, And Lefty Gomez used to tell stories about Jimmy Fox, and my favorite one is that Fox came out to bat against Gomez, and Bill Dickey shook off. He was calling for pitches, and Gomez was shaking him off. So finally, Bill Dickey goes out to the mound, and Gomez said, Dickey asked him what he wanted to throw, and Gomez said nothing. Maybe he'll get tired and leave.
Vern Lefty Gomez.
Gomez, yeah, he was a character, and
yes.
And Fox, he used to say that Fox hit some balls off of him that are still going.
I can imagine that. There's a picture of Fox somewhere around in an old book that I have somewhere.
Yeah.
Probably in my library, if I think about it, of Fox pictured next to a young Ted Williams, the Splinter.
Oh, yeah, they were teammates on the Red Sox for a couple of years.
Right.
Yeah, and Lefty Grove was there also.
Big guy. Let's just put it that way. Just a massive guy.
Yeah.
Here's Ted Williams before he came into his body, so to speak. Wow. He was a beast. I mean, he lived up to his nickname.
Yeah, all four of them.
You mentioned Al Simmons.
Yeah, he's another. He wasn't that much of a power hitter, but he had line drives all over the place, and he was a terrific.
The power notwithstanding, his numbers are a lot like.
Yeah, his numbers are insane. Yeah.
Yeah, really nice numbers.
Yeah. Cochran was a spiritual leader, and then went to Detroit, won 2 pennants and 1 World Series there, and his career ended as a player when he was hitting the headway pitch in 1937.
Right.
And Grove's 1930 and 1931 seasons are considered 2 of the best pitching seasons because his ERA, he won the ERA title both of those years. Those are 2 of the 9 ERA titles that he won. And they were at least 2 runs below the league average in 1930 and 1931.
You're talking about a team with Grove, Fox,
Simmons and Cochran, and they had some pretty good bit players, but those 4 were the linchpins of those teams. Yeah,
that's pretty nice. Now, with no farm system, how did Connie Mack
recommendations from people, and he liked college players.
Okay.
He liked college players, and
he was a 10-year major league catcher himself.
Oh yeah, back in the 1890s. Yeah, and he actually was on the Pirates, the version thereof in the 1890s.
Oh.
And when Van Johnson was forming the American League, he recruited Mack, gave Mack the Philadelphia franchise. And the Phillies, who were a pretty decent team in the 1890s, their owner, John Rogers, was one of the cheapest owners there was. And the Phillies, along with the Boston National League team, were the teams that lost the most jumpers to the American League.
To the Federal League?
No, the American League. Federal League was later on.
Oh, okay.
And so he got a bunch of players, and then they got a court order when they had Nap with Joey, the A's in their first year, and they got a court order from the Phillies preventing with Joey from playing with them, with the A's, and the A's had sent him to Cleveland until the peace was settled in 1903. Joey had to skip all the games in Philadelphia because he could have been arrested. And he originally had Shoeless Joe Jackson. But Jackson, when it came up to the A's, could not handle big cities.
Really?
Yeah, and they also shipped Shoeless Joe Jackson to Cleveland, who later sent him on to the the White Sox. And,
so Shoeless Joe has a history with the A's, in the record book with the A's.
The irony is that both Connie Mack and Charles Summers, who owned the Cleveland team, offered to get Shoeless Joe Jackson literate, and he turned them both down.
Wow.
Which I read in an excellent biography of Shoeless Joe Jackson a number of years ago, and of course, he was the biggest tragedy of the whole Black Sox scandal.
Very interesting. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alan Blumkin, keep it going, a real historian. You are, Alan, I've said this to you before privately, you're one of the kingpins of this station, and you're the Tommy Heinrich of this station.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy sharing this with, all your audience.
And it's all for posterity. Every show we do is archived on YouTube. And if you're out there and you want to check out our shows, go to the comfortablyzonedradio.com. All one word, comfortablyzonedradio.com, and you get to our website. We also have a page on YouTube, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. You can befriend either of us, Alan Blumkin, on Facebook. Befriend me on Facebook. Join the group on Facebook, the Comfortably Zoned Radio group on Facebook. We keep you up to date on all the shows that we have going on in the network. And just to briefly, we've got 7 baseball shows that are just terrific. We have a Giant show. I co-host a show with Tim Haller for the Giants and Patrick Quinlan. The Dodgers do a show. I'm not involved with their show other than to post it, but it's A Tale of Two Cities, Dodger Baseball, and it's terrific. Peter Trunk, Bernie Rose, and Linda Wilson do that. Alan and I do the Peter Golenbach show at night. We're 2 of the 3 Michigan baseball fans. And there's another show called Weighted Donuts. Weighted Donuts is a show that Wayne Unger hosts along with Craig Steer, and they talk baseball and break down stuff that statistically and human interest stuff. Is a tremendous show. I'm very proud of how that's developed. And we have several other shows that are not directly baseball. We have a wrestling show. Fred Lazarus does a wrestling podcast called Durfcast, and it's terrific. A fellow by the name of Robert A. Medeiros does a show called Bob's Radio Cafeteria, and he interviews a bunch of people in the showbiz genre, musicians and the like, and we have a bunch of new shows starting in the next few weeks. One of them is hosted by Maria Falzone, who's an old friend of mine from doing comedy back like 30 years ago, and she is terrific, and it's called, let me tell you what she does. she tours colleges and gives sex-positive lectures on safe sex and all kinds of stuff. And she's going to do a podcast on the station. It's called Sex, Stand-Up, and Silliness. And really looking forward to that one. And if I left anybody out, I told you about the Dodgers, the Giants, and now we have this going with the A's. I'm indebted to you, Alan. Thanks for being a part of it.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to sign off.
All right, you got to do the 5-star.
We're going to push the button. We're going to tell everybody to keep on keeping on.
Okay.
We're going to talk after you push the button.
Okay.
All right. See you next week, everybody.